Okay, so picture this. After 40 long years wandering in the wilderness, the people of Israel are standing on the very edge of the Promised Land. It's right there. But before they can cross over, their leader, Moses, delivers this final, defining speech. And these aren't just some last-minute suggestions. This is the foundational charge that's going to shape their entire identity as a nation. Let's dive into this incredibly powerful final message.
So here's how we're going to break down these 5 crucial chapters. We'll kick things off with a foundation of gratitude, then we'll witness this incredibly dramatic public ceremony, explore the 2 very different paths laid before the nation, see the covenant get renewed, and wrap it all up with the ultimate choice that's presented to every single person. All right, so let's jump right in with chapter 26. And what's so fascinating here is that Moses doesn't start with a big list of rules or laws. Nope, it starts with an act of worship. An act that is totally rooted in thankfulness.
So the very first thing they're told to do once they finally harvest crops in this new land is to perform the ritual of the firstfruits. It's a really simple but profound act. You bring the very first of your produce in a basket to the priest, but you don't just silently hand it over. That's not the point. You're commanded to tell a story.
This recitation, this is the whole point. Every single Israelite, holding their own personal harvest, is told to remember their collective story. They have to connect their current prosperity, their full basket, directly back to their humble, desperate beginnings and to God's act of salvation. It's a constant, built-in reminder. You have all this abundance because God saved you from slavery.
And the chapter wraps up with this mutual declaration. This gets right to the heart of their relationship with God, the covenant. And you know, a covenant is so much more than a contract. It's a sacred, binding agreement that defines who they are. Just look at the balance on this slide. It's a two-way street. Israel pledges to be God's people, and in turn, God pledges to be their God. It's a relationship built on promises declared out loud.
So the big takeaways from this first section are pretty foundational. First, gratitude isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's a deliberate action, an action rooted in remembering where you came from. Second, real worship isn't just about you and God. It isn't complete unless you're sharing your abundance with the most vulnerable people. The text specifically calls out the Levites, strangers, widows, and orphans. And finally, that this whole thing is framed as a covenant, a mutual commitment sworn by both sides.
Okay, now let's move on to chapter 27 and see how this all builds. The idea of commitment ramps up, moving from a personal act of worship to this massive, unforgettable public ceremony that the entire nation has to take part in once they get into the land.
And the instructions are super specific. They're told to create a permanent monument by writing the law on these big plastered stones for everyone to see. They build an altar for worship. And then comes the main event. They split the entire nation in 2 for this dramatic call and response. This slide just illustrates the setup perfectly. You've got 6 tribes standing on Mount Gerizim to pronounce blessings, and the other 6 on Mount Ebal to pronounce curses. This is not some quiet reading in a small building. This is a national spectacle designed to be seared into their collective memory.
You have to imagine this. The Levites would stand in the valley between these 2 mountains and just shout out a series of curses for specific sins. Things like idolatry, disrespecting your parents, moving a property line, or misleading the blind. And after each and every curse, the entire nation, all 12 tribes, had to roar back in agreement, "Amen," which means, so be it. They are all publicly agreeing to the justice of these consequences.
That incredibly powerful ceremony sets the stage perfectly for chapter 28, which is, wow, one of the most vivid chapters in the entire book. It lays out in almost painful detail the 2 potential futures for Israel, and it's all based on their choice, to obey or to disobey.
Now, what's so striking here is the direct symmetry. The chapter literally presents a mirror image. If you obey, you get blessings in every part of your life. In the city, in the field, your family, your finances, your national security. But if you disobey, you get the exact opposite curse in those exact same areas. The message is crystal clear. Consequences are not random. They are the natural, direct results of the path you decide to walk.
And the description of the curses is just overwhelming. I mean, we're not just talking about a bad harvest. We're talking about total societal breakdown. The land fails, the people get sick, the army is defeated, the economy completely collapses, and it all ends in psychological torment and being exiled from the very land they were promised. The consequences are absolute, showing just how deeply their well-being is tied to their faithfulness to the covenant.
So you have to ask, why? Why such severe consequences? Well, the text gives the reason right here.
The core failure isn't just about accidentally breaking a rule, it's about the heart. It's a failure to serve God with joy and gratitude in response to all the good things He's given them. So the punishment of serving your enemies is a direct, logical consequence of refusing to serve God gladly.
So after that really stark warning, Moses shifts gears in chapter 29. He moves to formally renew the covenant agreement with this new generation, reminding them of who they are and everything they've already seen God do.
He basically recounts their whole history. He says, your eyes have seen the great signs in Egypt. You walked for 40 years in the wilderness, and your clothes didn't even wear out. God provided for you. He's building a case, right? He's saying, this covenant is based on God's proven track record of being faithful to you.
And then he says something absolutely extraordinary. He tells them this agreement isn't just for the people standing right there on that day. It is for all of their descendants, for every future generation of Israel. It's a timeless pact that binds the nation's past, present, and future all together.
This verse is such a cornerstone. Moses basically says, look, we're not going to understand everything about God's plan. There are secret things that belong to Him and Him alone. But our responsibility is to focus on what has been revealed, the law. That is our clear duty, and it's enough for us to know.
And this brings us to the final chapter of his address, chapter 30. After all the history, all the laws, and all the warnings, Moses' tone shifts. It becomes one of incredible hope and a final, passionate appeal. He gives them this amazing promise. He says, even if the worst possible thing happens, even if they end up scattered to the ends of the earth because of the curses, the door is not shut forever. If they remember, if they return, and if they obey, God promises He will have compassion and bring them back. Restoration is always possible.
And then he just removes any excuse they might have that this is all too difficult. He says the command isn't some secret hidden away in heaven or something you have to sail across the sea to find. It is near. It is accessible. It is something they can know in their hearts and speak with their mouths. He presents obedience as a real, achievable possibility.
And this is the climax of it all. Moses summons heaven and earth as witnesses to this very moment. He boils everything he said, the entire law, down to a single stark choice: life and death, blessing and cursing. And with his final ounce of energy as their leader, he pleads with them, he commands them, therefore, choose life.
Moses' final charge ends right there, on that timeless, personal command. It was a choice for Israel standing on the plains of Moab. And this text leaves us with that exact same question. It powerfully frames obedience not as some heavy burden, but as the very definition of life itself. So the question is still hanging in the air. What does it mean for us to choose life today?